Right, guys. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Castcast, where I am your host, Cassidy Streeter. And today we look at the remainder of the Week 7 games for the 2023-2024 NFL season. I'm not going to lie, I think that this week, there is a good amount of games going into this week. I can openly say that I'm excited because right after this podcast I'm actually going to a Packers pep rally in Denver, and then tomorrow, I'm going to the game at Mile High. But personally, I'm really excited for the games this week. Excuse me. But overall, with that, let's just jump into it. I will say this about Thursday night. I did predict the Jaguars to win. They did end up winning. I didn't end up watching the whole game, to be honest, because I worked for like 12 hours beforehand and I was pretty gassed that night, to be honest with you. But I am not surprised, I guess, that the Jaguars won. I think that the Raiders have had a tough go of it offensively, and even though it seemed like they had a tough go of it early on in the game where they weren't really doing anything, and then they made it a game at the end. I think that just the fact that you're so inconsistent on offense is cause for alarm, especially when your offense is where most of your star talent is on the. Oh wait, did I say Raiders? I meant the Saints. The Saints, I think they have a sound defense. Don't get me wrong, but I think that they have the potential to have more star talent on the offense. Having looked at their games, it's just really inconsistent right now. But with that, we are gonna move on, and I will show you guys my screen here. But the first game we have to look at is Lions at Baltimore. I was kind of looking at Baltimore hosting the Lions. I think that this is, and I mean, it's been talked about a lot this week. And I think that, looking at this, the win probability, not really going in Detroit's favor, which, you can arguably say that, possibly it's because of how good the Baltimore defense is. They've been doing really well. They've been running the ball really well on offense. And then Lamar Jackson clearly lighting it up, whenever he passes it with pretty close to a 70% completion rating, which is, remarkable. And them seemingly being able to do really well with Lamar and his rushing, obviously, and then really doing well without their running back that they lost for the year and moving to Gus Edwards. I think that this is a good, well-rounded unit. I think that Zay Flowers, has been doing really, really well. I think that the only thing that I see with the Ravens that I don't really like is their red zone offense, passing wise, is not very good. And if you think about the way that the Lions are on offense, they pass a good amount, but they also run really, really well come red zone because teams just have a hard time keeping them to no gain. Like it's almost always a positive gain because of their O line. So I think that the Lions, I think that overall, them getting this small of a thing, I would almost say that I feel like this is a 50-50 game almost, and then the other thing too is that the Lions do pretty good against the run. I think that they're susceptible against the pass. But yeah, the Ravens haven't looked great on passing. Besides the completion percentage for Lamar Jackson, after 6 games into the season, he's averaging a little over 200 yards passing a game, which is, pretty subpar. And 5 TDs to 3 interceptions doesn't really scream dangerous to me. And obviously, Lamar himself does have 9 total TDs. You obviously kind of have to look at that with him. But I think that this Lions defense matches up pretty well because their linebacker core and their D line are the primary sources of strength through their defense. I do like their young corner. I forget his name. I think that he's overperforming. Honestly, I mean, until we see it consistently for a long time, I don't want to say that he's a bona fide, lock at corner. I think that sometimes, the first year, these guys, they've been coming out and they've been looking scrappier. But even with some of these guys in like their second and third year, they look a little bit worse. Teams figure out their tendencies. The receivers know how to run routes against them a little bit better. It is hard, the second hardest position in the league, after quarterback being cornerback. I think that it's hard to have sustained success in such a crazy passing league nowadays. But looking at the Lions offensively, I think that they can obviously, they have quite a bit more. Jared Goff is playing obviously really well. Not as close to a 70% completion percentage, but playing really, really well. Over double the touchdowns of Jackson. And then you have Montgomery and Gibbs, and they obviously rush quite a bit. And they rush quite a bit, but they still have, a lot of passing yards, through obviously 6 games, averaging, over 250 yards a game from Goff. And that is, that's really solid. I mean, if you're having an insane year, you're probably over 300 a game. And I mean, Goff is not far off from that. Looking at this, obviously more yards from Detroit, more passing, less rushing. Because I think that their style of running the ball is a lot more short yardage. Not that their guys can't get home run hits, but they just don't really seem built for that, I guess. Obviously, the points scored, big differential for Detroit. Detroit has less fumbles, same amount of interceptions. They've given up less sacks because, like I said, that O-line is very dominant. Baltimore, obviously, it's pretty good that you're under 3 sacks a game, I guess. But Baltimore does have better third down efficiency, TOP. About even on the penalty stats. And I mean, looking at this, it's like Baltimore has a worse third down efficiency, which I think, isn't anything to be like super concerned about. But the only thing that I see that I guess I kind of think a little bit better on from Baltimore is that they have, quite a bit more sacks. But in a game with Detroit's O-line, I think that, you just can't really bank on getting to the quarterback and getting to Goff. And that's, I think, another reason why he's been doing so well this year. And I know that, being a Packers fan, I look at this game and I would like, the Ravens to win it, but I am actually going to take the Lions in this game. I think that they improved to 6-1, and I think that they can do so and in good fashion against the Ravens. Even though the Ravens, I mean, they're playing pretty good ball this year, but like I said, I think that Detroit matches up better against, the Ravens than many would care to admit, I guess. So I'm actually going to go Detroit by 6 points. I think that I don't think that they're going to light it up against the Ravens, but I think that they're going to be able to do a lot of things, against them. Obviously, looking at the Ravens, the one thing that I do think about them that is kind of the X factor is that you have Roquan Smith, who is having an unbelievable year, unbelievable talent. The only middle linebacker I have that's maybe better than him, but at least on par, is Fred Warner in the league. But he is a game changer, and he does kind of know Goff a little bit because He was on the Bears, for years before being traded last year. At least I think that's the case. But yeah, my prediction is Lions by 6. Moving on to our next game, we have the Raiders visiting the Bears. Kind of interesting here. We obviously have a Raiders team that just played against the Patriots last week, and they really didn't win by much. And you think about the Patriots, so the 2 games before that, they had like 3 games each. The Bears obviously just had kind of an upsetting loss against the Vikings where Fields was injured. I'm actually going to look that up. I'm going to look up the injury report here real quick just to. And I mean, I guess I'll look over this quick too. Oh, I guess for the Lions, David Montgomery is out. Questionable, but this doesn't really worry too much. I think that their rookie running back is good for the Ravens. Marcus Williams being out is kind of big. Questionable. Marlon Humphrey with an illness. I think that he's gonna be ready to go. But Raiders with Jimmy Garoppolo, he is out. I guess. I'm gonna look up the depth charts here real quick. I guess I don't even know who the backup is for Garoppolo. I'm trying to remember. I feel like I should know who it is. I feel like it's Brian Hoyer. Hoyer, is obviously a journeyman QB. We look at this, and also, I guess we should look at the Bears. We should look at, I guess, the Bears injury report. I guess I haven't heard on whether or not Fields is playing or not, or whether he's out. Oh, he is out. The injury report here. It's his thumb. Crazy. DB Eddie Jackson is also out, but they've been playing with him this year, and I don't really think it's effective. I don't really think it's affected their defense too much, to be honest. And the rest of these guys I kind of look at, and I guess the interesting thing is that obviously Tyson Bagent, who came in last week, kind of played really well, but looked like he had some miscommunication, especially on his pass that was on the deep left. I think it was to DJ Moore, and he just missed through it. I don't know if that's just rustiness or what it was, or if he thought that Moore was going to run like a deeper route, but it looked like just a go route. So maybe he just needed to shake off the rust or something like that. But yeah, it's I guess interesting to me. You look at this team, and yeah, I overall think that if Bagent doesn't play, that well, that you definitely have to pick the team with, more talent. And he's going to have Max Crosby, who's having a hell of a year, coming after him. So it's like the spread on this game is a bit closer. I do think that, the Raiders, and I feel like with the Raiders and Hoyer, he's probably going to be trying to get the ball more to Davante Adams. Who knows how much practice he has with him, but I think that Davante is going to need to get more involved because he's been kind of frustrated with how limited he's been, even getting targeted. Like he's just not getting the ball, type of thing. And you just got to give him a shot at the ball. Like it's like how when they talk to him, it's like with the conservative style of Garoppolo just doesn't want to wing it to him, but it's like, just put it in a spot where it's at least going to be a 50-50 for him, because he's always going to be double covered. He's still that guy that, the dog that everyone knows that made a name for himself on Green Bay. That it's like, oh, he's got such an arsenal of ways to catch it that it's like, just put it where his hands can go, and where he's gonna at least gonna be able to potentially beat the wide receiver or the defensive back to it because he's gonna make his best attempt at it. It's like he's not that kind of doesn't have any quit in him, and he even proved that last year when the Raiders were having a very subpar season that it's like, oh, a good amount of touchdowns, 1,400 yards. But, I gotta kind of give it to, yeah, I think I'm gonna give it to Las Vegas here. I think that Crosby possibly has a day. And it's like the Chicago Bears O-line definitely hasn't been fixed entirely. They don't look as bad as like last year, the year before, but it's still pretty bad. You know, middle of the pack on offense. Their defense is obviously, pretty bad. And then passing, and rush. I mean, their rushing is, pretty good on the Bears, and they're gonna have to lean on that. But I think that against a team like the Raiders, who they're not really known for their DBs, their strength is really their linebacker core and their D line. So it's like, yeah, I'm gonna go Raiders in this one. I'm gonna just go Raiders by 7. I think that, the Bears defense hasn't been playing terrible, but overall, I don't really think it has the capability to like shine super well unless the offense takes off like it did against the Commanders weeks ago, where it's like essentially the momentum is given to the Bears. But I just don't see that unless they have some crazy play or DJ Moore gets really hot really early. I just don't see that happening. And I mean, they probably did know that Fields wasn't going to play because his thumb is so bad. But, how much is this unknown backup prospect of the Bears, like, really going to do when he wasn't, like, that great of a talent coming out of college? So, yeah, Raiders by 7. Now, moving on, we have the Cleveland Browns coming off a somewhat crazy win over the Niners last week that I wouldn't even really say was that crazy. I actually talked to a good amount of people in my Uber this week, and many people thought that it was a huge upset, and I was like, well, I actually said in my analysis last week of them that I think that they measure up really good against the Niners, and they just kind of proved that. The Niners got kind of banged up throughout the game, Debo exiting in the first half. And then you have McCaffrey that I think that they just withheld him because they were scared that if you lose McCaffrey, you lose, and I mean, if Debo, depending on how long he is out type of thing, you lose, essentially you're not the top team anymore. I feel like you could definitely argue that there are some other teams that are more healthy and have been playing pretty well that are better, because I mean, you lose that much star talent in one game and things are just looking rough for you for the rest of the season, depending on how long those players are out. But the Browns, I think that's a really good win for them. I think that Indianapolis, getting beat by the Jags pretty hard last week. I think that, the Colts struggles are still going to happen because I think that Myles Garrett is playing. Honestly, I think he's the best. He's been the best pass rusher this year. I think he's winning the most in his matchups, and he's also got, I think he's tied for the most sacks, if I'm not mistaken, or quite a bit of sacks. But yeah, he's getting a lot of pressures, even when he's not sacking the quarterback. And he's got the highest win percentage, which against the Colts team where Richardson is not playing and you have Minshew, who is not going to be able to escape from Garrett, I think that Minshew is going to have a tough game. The fact that they only have a 3-point advantage here is probably because I'm assuming that Deshaun Watson isn't playing still. Let's move on to this. Deshaun Watson is still injured, and it's his right shoulder. It's his throwing shoulder, and it's torn, which I just don't like. I don't like it if they force him back. Especially with their win last week. I feel like if you're smart and you're the Browns, you play PJ this week because you don't want Watson potentially getting hit. And the way that he plays, the way he scrambles types of thing, you really just don't want him getting hit high or at all. Because that shoulder is going to be, it's going to take time to heal probably. I'm assuming. And it's like, whenever it's something to do with the throwing arm, it's never a good thing. And I think that, going up against a Colts team that obviously, like, you look at after last week, they probably feel like they have to win this week, especially with the Jaguars win last night. I just don't trust it if they play Watson, But let's quickly look and see if there's anything different. So yeah, Watson questionable they have here, but PJ Walker, he played, fine. It's like he's obviously a backup. He made some mistakes, but I really wouldn't want to risk. I just really wouldn't want to risk, Watson at all. And it's like, he just needs to look. He just needs to look better, and and to the point where that shoulder is not going to affect him at all. But yeah, looking at Indianapolis, here they have, quite a bit of, injuries, I guess. Obviously Richardson, Alec Pierce, and then Kylan Granson out, unfortunately. I know that he's been kind of doing well for them, but yeah, looking at their team, kind of banged up. A lot of injuries. The Colts, I think, need to be able to run the ball well, but when you have a team like the Browns who just played the Niners, who have a run game that's almost always going to net positive yards, you're not going to be able to really do that. And that's why it's just crazy to me that they have 22-19 here. I just don't see a world where the Colts, unless they do some insanely miraculous protection scheme for Minshew, even then I think it's going to be hard, because what weapons do you have on the Colts that are really going to be able to tear up the Browns defense when they have a really good secondary as well? There's a reason why the Browns have the number 1 defense this year. And it's led by Myles Garrett. Zadarius Smith has been doing really well, the leadership there. 2 good corners, Ward and Newsome, and it's just, this team has so much talent. And I think that last week they put their name on the map, and it's like this week they can start to kind of itch away, potentially to try and get in the lead for their division by going 4-2. And I mean, this is a team right now that I see going to the playoffs with how they're playing, because their defense is really, really good, even without Nick Chubb, because they seem to have sustained that blow and overcome it in a way. But my prediction is going to be the Cleveland Browns by 10 over the Colts. Moving on, we have the Buffalo Bills and the Patriots. The Patriots have not been playing well. Last week they did put up a fight against the Raiders, like I mentioned earlier. But the Bills, they nearly lost last week. They nearly lost against the Giants, a team that you look at the Giants, and it's like they had Tyrod Taylor, and essentially they've had the worst O-line, and you still aren't able to really score on them. Even though I think the Giants have a scrappy young defense that is only going to get better, assuming that they keep the same D coordinator that has, Sexy Dexter Lawrence, I mean, he's just an anomaly. I think that guy's just a freak. Makes you change the game plan so much. But Buffalo just seemingly not doing very much. And it's like I'd like to see this team. I'd like to see this team, give James Cook like more shots, to be honest with you. I think that they have an underrated running game where it's like they have these brawlers on their line to create the potential for big runs. And even, I mean, you put in your fullback Reggie Gillum, who I think is kind of underrated as a fullback, and have him lead block. I think that you could open games up with the run game for this, and then it makes the Stephon Diggs connection. Gabe Davis is always kind of a sneaky threat, getting open and making big plays for them. And then it's like Allen is having a great year. And I mean, you have a really good tight end core. You could easily run Josh Allen, Cook, Diggs, and Davis alongside Knox and Kincaid. In most sets, and teams would have a hard time preparing that. Like, are they going to pass? Are they going to do something schemy? And it's like you just looking at all of these. The one thing that I'll say is that their pass rush has been better. It kind of sucks that Ed Oliver is out, but Von Miller and Greg Rousseau have been doing really well this year, and they've just been having a very good, honestly, a very good they've just been having a very good defensive year, even though they didn't re-sign Tremaine Edmonds, which I thought was a dumb idea, to be honest with you. One of the youngest, most fastest, and sure tacklers in the league. But this defense has seemingly still been playing really well. Tre'Davious White being hurt for the rest of the year is really sucky. Milano being injured is also sucky. He's a really good but overall I think that this team just is really well coached, and that's why their record is the way that they are, is that their coach does a really good job of making sure that they are competitive week in, week out, even when the games aren't that pretty. But New England, I don't really have much to say about them. I guess I don't know. I'm going to look at the depth chart real quick for New England, but yeah, they still have Mac Jones starting. I don't really know what to say about that. The fact that these guys have 4 guys on their offense, and they list Malik Cunningham as their second, even though there's been talk about Greer or Zappy, stepping in type of thing. And it's just, I don't really know what to say. And I mean, their line is banged up, obviously. Looking at this, it's like they're all questionable. Riley Reef is out. And it's just, it's crazy to me, how banged up their O-line is. And then you go up against Von Miller and Rousseau. They could definitely have a heyday on Mac Jones, who just hasn't looked good. And I think I honestly, at this point, I would have benched Mac Jones if it was up to me. I'm not going to lie, with the way that he's playing. Because last year was the offensive coordinator, Patricia. This year, what is it? You have Bill O'Brien, who they're like, oh yeah, is a great play caller and all that. And I mean, the fact that you have lack of talent just doesn't really concern me. I mean, Mac Jones, has a pretty good arm and is pretty accurate, but he just makes bad decisions. And at this point, you kind of just have to pull him to humble him. And for that, I'm going to say Buffalo Bills by 14, to be honest with you. I think that they just overwhelm so much of this, and their team's just so much better, where it's like, it's surprising to me that they have the 14th ranked defense, to be honest here. But yeah, I think it's going to be another, shit show, honestly, for New England. But yeah, that's why I'm picking Bills by 14. I think that this is going to be a fat blowout, and I don't think they're going to compete like they did last week. moving on, we have Commanders visiting the Giants. Like I said, the Giants last week put up a game against the Bills. The Bills, barely beat them. It came down literally to the last play where the Giants tried to get it to Darren Waller, and he wasn't able to come down with it off of something that many said that should have been pass interference. They should have gotten another shot type of thing, but it didn't even look like that good of a thrown ball, to be honest with you, by Tyrod Taylor. And that's the other thing is I guess is Daniel Jones going to be back? Because a lot of people are saying how bad he is, this year, and I just don't see it because he's been more pressured by. He's questionable this week. He's been pressured more than almost any other QB in the league. Like, you look at his line, Andrew Thomas, when he was playing poorly. This guy did not look like a top 5 left tackle like he had been out of last season. And then Evan Neal, who's supposed to be kind of their star right tackle that they drafted, looking absolutely porous. And who knows if it's because he's battling the injury, but he is just, it's almost like some plays he takes the play off, to be honest with you, and doesn't block. Yeah, which is just insane, and there's some things that he's even said in the media, and I'm not going to get into it, but it's like, I don't understand what his mentality or what is going on with him. Like, I do not like the way that the edge is being blocked on the New York Giants. Looking at this team, they have Jalen Hyatt, as the third wide receiver now. Maybe they're trying to do more things. But Slayton and Robinson, I think are fine wide receivers. I think that you just have to be able to use Hyatt to kind of open up the top and give space underneath because they're more possession guys. Like Wan'Dale Robinson isn't that big, and Darius Slayton doesn't really have the speed you would need for him to be over the top. And Hyatt has the speed. Same with Waller. It's like you have these two big play threats, and then you have your possession guys, and Wan'Dale can make stuff happen after the catch, but overall he's your slot guy, but looking at this team, it's like, when your pass protection isn't very good, and obviously these guys have a number of dudes banged up, you just start to wonder how they're going to hold up. And it's been like a roller coaster cycle of offensive linemen. Like, I'm not going to lie, when there's problems with these bottom 5 here, the rest of these positions all the way up here just do not really matter. They just don't, that much, and there's only so much you can do with little to no time with your QB. We'll scroll down and we'll look at this real quick and see what's going on. Giants out Thomas, Pert, Smitch, Daniel Jones, neck, ankle, Adoree Jackson. That's not a good sign, especially when you're going up against a guy like Terry McLaurin. I think that Terry McLaurin, I say it every week, he is a threat every single week because of how talented and relentless he is against every single team he plays. And the Commanders, it's a divisional game. I don't care that it's going to be being played in New York type of thing. I think that, I think that the New York Giants, and it's like the thing that I also think about with them is that Young and Sweat are going to be able to have heydays against, this depleted Giants O-line. And even if Daniel Jones plays and he's obviously with a neck injury, it's like it's nothing with his mobility. But, you just worry about, the potential damage to the player's like bodily integrity, because neck injuries are just some of those that they can come out of nowhere and they can essentially end a player's career, if they become bad enough. And it's like, you don't want to injure those. And they're the worst. They're honestly the worst kind of thing, I think, in the NFL is when a player gets compromised physically in the neck to where the team won't play him because it's just such a health risk to them. and it's like, nobody wants, God forbid, nobody wants a player to get paralyzed, but, potentially paralyzed because of a potential neck injury or something, but I still don't see it. I think that the Commanders win this game. I guess I totally forgot about what they say with the chances. They give the Commanders a 57% shot. Sam Howell last week played really well. I think it's crazy that they're the 30th ranked defense, type of thing. But you look at this Giants team, and it's like, even though I think that they have a scrappier defense, they're still ranked as 28th, even though they held, Josh Allen and the Bills last week to really low, but I think that this is another game that like Sam Howell is going to, put more reason on why he could potentially be rookie of the year. I'm trying to think of who I would have as a favorite this year. There's quite a few players that are playing really well, I guess, as rookies. But I think that Sam Howell has a good case so far. As being an underdog selection and then proving himself. So I'm going to take Washington, and I'm going to take them actually by a large margin in this game. I think that they win by 17 in this game because I think that they are one of those teams that even though they're at a 500 record, I think that they're potentially better if they can kind of avoid these stalls in their offense. And I think that their defense is scrappy enough and physical enough that it's like you just don't do anything too well. I'm going to go look. I need to see actually. So Saquon, they say, is fully healthy. Yeah, Saquon's fully healthy, but I think that this Washington D plays really well against the run because they're really physical and they just, they're really physical up front. And I mean, like I said, the Giants O-line is banged up. It makes it so hard when you have a O-lineman carousel in today's league. And it's like last year, the Rams had that same kind of problem and their offense was abysmal and their team pretty much, it was impossible for them to win games. So yeah, Washington Commanders by 17 tomorrow. And especially, no injuries. But moving on, the next game that we're going to talk about is Falcons visiting Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay obviously coming off of a bye week after losing to the Lions, a game where I thought that Mike Evans was going to have a day, and he did not. But looking at this, the Falcons still no injuries. Kudos to them. They're keeping their team healthy. I think it's another reason why they're 3-3. They've been kind of having an up and down season where it's been kind of inconsistent. And I think that their offensive inconsistencies are primarily because of Desmond Ridder. I think that Bijan Robinson is a talent that you can't discredit at all. And he obviously makes guys miss, has incredible speed, and just, there's just no reason why he shouldn't be one of the league's premier backs after this year. And they even line him up in wide receiver. They're really trying to make him look, I guess, like McCaffrey in a way. And, it's almost like a requirement for running backs to, be, good pass threats, type of thing where it's like they can either, go short and do damage in space. But, they also have Algier and Cordell Patterson's. They are very loaded and they can keep these guys fresh behind a really dominant O-line with, Lindstrom, Matthews, and just their whole line. I mean, just fits the mold for this team. And I think that, if Ridder can stop throwing picks, he really needs to just do that. Because, I mean, I've seen him go on streaks this year where he's completing passes. And then it's just like too many picks, too many boneheaded picks where it is all on him. And it's like he's too physically talented of a player where it's like this guy can also run. Has a hell of an arm. He has everything going for him. He's just got to correct these mental mistakes. Because it's like Drake London is the real deal. I feel like he does really well. Matt Collins, essentially is trying to prove himself because who he was on last year, he just didn't do well at all. And it's like, they traded for Van Jefferson, maybe because they want some more depth at wide receiver. And Van Jefferson, I think, is, he was an underrated, valuable threat for the Rams, and even when they went for their Super Bowl run. And I think that they really got rid of him because he needed kind of a fresh start. And I think that he wanted to be like a guy that, you play high. And then it's like, not to mention you have Kyle Pitts, who I think should be doing way better. And it's like, but it's like I've said, the passing game has suffered because of the way that Ritter plays, even though he does make some good throws type of thing. And looking at this team on the defense, it's like Calais Campbell and Bud Dupree being your kind of veteran presence type of thing. Grady Jarrett's always been, a really good player. AJ Terrell, one of the best young corners in the league. And then Jesse Bates. Jeff Okudah, I guess, has really proven that he deserves a starting job still when he was drafted high by the Lions years ago and they traded him because he was injured and didn't really work out. But this is a defense with really good potential and does really, really well and doesn't really have a lot of holes. Richie Grant has been kind of ball hawking and going for a lot of, turnover type tackles and that sort of thing. And you just have a good blend of veteran with young players, but the Falcons, it's just one of those things that, until Ritter can, cut down on the mistakes at least a little bit, because he does just too many. It's like one here and there isn't going to hurt you like an insane amount unless you're playing elite teams all the time during the regular season. But if you're having multiple every game and it's just seemingly not getting better, you're just not going to win a lot of, games, which is why I think the Falcons are 3-3. I think, I wouldn't say Ritter's solely to blame, because there's definitely been some games where the run game isn't there and, stuff like that. But, all game, but Ritter is a huge part of why this team is struggling and why their record is the way they are. And then you look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, their last loss or game obviously being a loss against the Lions. Like I said, I want to say this. I think that this team goes and they beat the Falcons because obviously right now they are first in the division. They have every reason of why this team can perform. Vita Vea being questionable is kind of bad, but this team has so much talent. You look at, their linebacker core, White, David, and Barrett, really probably one of the best linebacker cores in the league. And then you have really good cornerbacks and Jamel Dean and Davis. Antoine Winfield has been playing really good, living up to his father's name, to be honest with you. And just an overall good unit here where, they're, besides Vita Vea, Cansey, Hall, and Shoyinka, pretty young here. Probably their most inexperienced part of them. But I think that this team is really gonna line up well because, like I said, they have David White and Shaquille Barrett, who was arguably one of the best outside linebackers years ago, but is still pretty, and probably not anymore, but is still really good. I think that they measure up well against the Falcons, and of course, it's a team that they know very well. I am actually going to pick the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to win this game, and it is also in Tampa. So that stadium gets loud. Those fans are really passionate. They give them a very small margin here, which I do think is a bit accurate. I am going to say Tampa Bay Buccaneers by 3. And I think that, it's only a matter of time until their offense actually gets going. Because obviously right now it's the 30th ranked offense, which is kind of insane. But obviously, like I said, their defense is playing really, really, really well. And I think that they can potentially, and because of Ritter, I think that this could be another game where he throws, maybe more than one pick, or he throws multiple picks against this defense, because they're very, scrappy. And I think that Ritter, until he shows that he can have a solid game, where he's not making these boneheaded decisions, I think he's a liability. And that is why I'm going Tampa Bay by 3, even though they have, apparently one of the worst offenses in the NFL. But moving on, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers going up against the Rams. This game, looking at Steelers visiting the Rams, obviously very long travel. The thing that I'll say is that Pittsburgh is obviously coming off of a bye week, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, let me look here. I'm pretty sure they came off of the last time they played was the 8th, and that was that great game that they had against the Ravens, where essentially they picked off Lamar Jackson in the end zone. I do remember this. And they outplayed themselves, at least defensively, I feel like, and that gave them the shot to win. But looking at how they've been playing on offense, I really think that Pittsburgh offensively has been playing porous. The last ranked offense in the NFL, the 15th ranked defense, even though I think that that's a little unfair. I think that they would be better if they had any type of offense. And it is hard to be good on defense when you're on the field all the time. And, this is the kind of thing that, yeah, you're looking at this and, they can probably get to Stafford, possibly, but it's going to be one of those things that it's not going to matter how much they get to him when, Kenny Pickett hasn't been playing well, and they seemingly just have nothing to get them going on offense. The thing that I like about the Pittsburgh is they do have a really good young wide receiver in Pickens, but that can stretch the field and it has dangerous speed. But if you can't get him the ball and you can't establish a run game, teams are just going to blanket him and not allow him to get open. So looking at this game, I fully expect, because the Rams, are kind of in I wouldn't say the hot seat in their division, but they are in the hot seat in their division. Because you look at the Seahawks and the Niners, look like they're the more complete teams to actually, be the top 2 teams, depending on what happens at the end of the year. And depending on whether, the Niners are healthy or whether last week was kind of a sign of things to come with them, which I don't think so, but you never know. But the Rams do not want to drop beneath 500. It's going to be really tough for them going forward with each week going down if they are beneath 500, essentially at almost the halfway mark of the year, 7 games in, with the next week being, a little under halfway through the year. But the Rams, I think, win this game solely because the protection's been better for Stafford. And they also, with Cooper Kupp coming back, he played, well. He doesn't look like his injury is really bugging him too much. But then you also have Puka Nacua, who, he probably would be my, pick to win Rookie of the Year if it happened, this week, because he's been playing so well. But Stafford just seems to be really good at, dipping and dunking to these guys, and they create really well, and you don't just have to worry about Cup now, you have to worry about Puka, and I think that that gives them the edge because that Steelers O-line still isn't fixed. It's a lot like, the Bears where they've acquired some pieces to get, but they just haven't. And then your offensive coordinator just seems, I always forget his name, but he just seems like he's really bad. Like why should the team be this bad? And some people that I've talked to have been saying that it's like, Pickett's still making some boneheaded throws which are on him. But if your quarterback is getting so frustrated that he's just kind of airing it out, like maybe that's a sign. Especially last year when he was thrown to the Wolves and he didn't play as bad as this year. It's like you would think the opposite, having a full off season, even if it is a new offensive coordinator and system. But it's been terrible. So I think that the Rams win this game, and I think they win it more than 4. I'm gonna go with 7 points. I think that the thing with the Rams is that they kind of lack, being able to get it into the end zone, to be honest with you, because their line isn't the best, but it's better than it was last year with its injury plagued season. But they really haven't been super flashy passing it. Like Puka, I think, even though he had incredible yards and a good amount of catches, didn't have like a touchdown until like week 3 or something like that. And, they've just got to kind of find their way in the red zone, which is, it's tough when your team, can seemingly do everything besides score touchdowns, which is, I think, is the reason why they're 3-3, to be honest with you. But Pittsburgh, I mean, unless they figured out something in the bye, I just don't see them winning. So yeah, I'm gonna pick Rams by 7 in this game. Going on to the next game, we obviously have the Cardinals visiting the Seahawks, a divisional NFC game. It's in Seattle. That stadium is, at CenturyLink is incredibly hard to play in, and I don't really, I remember that these games would sometimes be doozies, but you do have the Seahawks, I believe, came. Now they lost last week, I'm pretty sure. Oh, I don't know why I clicked that. They lost last week, and they just didn't look that good against the Bengals. And offensively, it was just, there was some beautiful balls by Geno Smith, but then there was also some where it's like, what are you doing? Some inconsistencies there, but I think that the Bengals are starting to, become one in themselves, and their defense, even though they lost Jesse Bates, has always been kind of a scrappier defense, right? Where they just make it difficult for teams to operate the way they want to operate. I just don't know what it is. It's their coaching, it's their scheme, but yeah, the Seahawks going to go play the Cardinals, they're at home. The Cardinals have seemingly been looking worse and worse now the last few weeks, and I mean, these divisional games can be funny. But the Cardinals, I think, they just ultimately lack the talent. And I'm not really going to say too much about this game, but I think that the Seahawks have a rebound game. And I actually think that they win this game by 13 is my prediction. I think Seahawks by 13. And I just think that, with the cornerback core and especially that they were tasked to guard Chase and Higgins last week. And they did really well. Like, this team definitely didn't lose because of their defense, the Seahawks. And they played well enough for them to win. It's just the offense was really struggling. But I think that the Cardinals lose by 13 points in this game. It could even be more, to be honest with you. But these divisional games, I don't like to say they're going to be blowouts, really, because they sometimes end up being really scrappy and random, But yeah, Seahawks by 13. And now going on to my team, the Packers visiting the Broncos. I think that looking at this game, I think it is a very big trap game. I think, you know, okay, let me restart that. So my Packers traveling to Mile High to play the 1-5 Broncos, coming off of a bye. The Broncos obviously having, a good amount of time still to prepare for this game because they played on Thursday night, not this last week, but the week before. So they've had a week and a couple days, to prepare, which, is kind of fair to me. It's like you're coming off a team, going off a bye. I think that it's kind of, I don't know if they plan the schedule like that, but it's good for them because obviously the Broncos have just looked rough this year. Something I'll say about the Packers, I guess, and let's kind of look at this. Let's kind of look at this a little bit. From an injury standpoint, we have Devondre Campbell, who is potentially, doubtful with an ankle injury. I doubt he goes. Aaron Jones is still, hurt with an Elton Jenkins, Josh Nijman, Devontae Wyatt with a knee, not good. Quay Walker, with a knee. I hope he goes. Jair Alexander. Cornerback Eric Stokes apparently is probably going to play. But then you have safety Darnell Savage and then Zane Anderson, with injuries. So a lot of injuries coming off of a bye. And the only one that the Broncos have is Greg Dulcich, which obviously he's, a tight end. And I don't think one of the focal points of their offense, even though what can you really say about, too much of their offense because they've been underperforming this year. But, looking at this game and pulling up the depth charts here, I think that, oh goodness, nope, lower down. I think that Denver, Javonte Williams, Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, Marvell Mims. I think that this team just, in the way that they've been playing, they haven't been getting separation. The main theme is that Russell Wilson has been having to make all of these tough throws. And while his QBR has been, was really good going into last week, he was like the fourth best. He threw for less than 100 yards. And he's had some plays that have ultimately cost this team drives. And I've said it before that numbers don't always tell you the full story. You can have a great QBR rating and be on a losing team, as far as I'm concerned, if you're just not willing to take risks and, always play it safe. Not that Russell Wilson does that. He sometimes goes off the hook and throws bad throws. And I think because of that, and I think that because their O-line, just hasn't been very good. And the Packers have had, I think they had the most pressures or something, through like 5 weeks or something, where it's coming from multiple players. Because obviously having a lot of pressures doesn't always equate to sacks, but it can equate to QBs making hasty, bad decisions. And I think that Russell Wilson is going to be hounded tomorrow. I think that he is just, it's not going to be something where he is able to, it's not going to be something where he's able to like escape that much, because you have like Rashawn Gary, Preston Smith, Kenny Clark, and then that's not to talk about Lucas Van Ness, and Igbare, who I feel like hasn't been getting much playing time lately, but makes an impact every time he's in. And just a plethora of guys that are applying pressure. Even Devontae Wyatt has been applying pressure, but obviously he has like a knee injury. And it's like looking at this team, to me, it's like you have Surtain on the defense, but this rushing defense has been kind of abysmal. They're honestly, in my opinion, the best guy they have on their front seven is Alex Singleton. And I just don't know really what to think of this team and their run defense. And while the Packers haven't been running it super well, they did just sign I'm trying to remember Robinson to the active roster. He's obviously not here on the depth chart, but I think this is the week that potentially Green Bay finally finds its offense. And I think that it's because hopefully LaFleur realizes he can't just scheme around Aaron Jones, as gifted a player as he is, with how much he's averaged a carry. The fact that, in the last game they played, he had schemed for Jones and then he just ended up being a no-go. And you could just tell that the offensive scheme was just falling flat, and it's just without any preparing, without actually thinking of what other people can contribute, like Musgrave, Reed, Dobbs. Watson is finally off the injury report. I'm super happy about it. Dontavian Wicks has apparently had some of the most open time. It has been getting the most percent. I'm trying to remember the stat I saw of that he's been getting open quite a bit, and he has been so good, in getting first and on limited playing time, that it's I think that this team really just needs they really just need to, establish an offensive scheme that doesn't always involve Jones, even though but when he's fully healthy, I fully support it. But if you have any question in your mind that he is not going to be fully healthy and being able to essentially carry this team, which I do have the faith in, but his hamstring just has been bad. You've got to figure out something with all of this, because there's a lot of potential talent on here. And it's like I've said with the defense. So, yeah, Kenny Clark, TJ Slaton's been playing well, Devontae Wyatt, Preston Smith, even McDuffie stepping in has been playing really well. It's surprising to me, even Eric Wilson getting playing time. They have played better than I would have expected them to, with the injuries to Campbell and then Quay Walker, obviously, 2 weeks ago. But yeah, Gary, even if Jair is questionable, I feel like, if Stokes plays, he's obviously listed as the fourth corner here. I think that, Rasul, Stokes, and Nixon can be opportunistic, and especially Rudy Ford, who leads the team in interceptions, has been playing, really good ball. Darnell Savage, unfortunately, having a injury just isn't very good, I feel like. But I think that with the pass rush, if they're applying enough pressure on Russell Wilson, they can win this game through that if they, can do things offensively, which I think that they can against this defense that is severely underperformed from last year. Because of the inconsistencies, though, with the Packers offense, because it's either seemed to have been hit or miss. I only want to give the Packers a 7-point advantage over the Broncos. Because, you even look in this, the worst defense, but it's also against the second worst offense in the league. But yeah, the defense for the Packers, 7th best, like I said, and it's that could be the turning point, is how well the Packers get pressure. And it's one of those things that it's if you're dropping to 2-4 this week as the Packers, and you're probably already thinking as a Denver Broncos player, our season's probably over. They would have to win out, in my opinion, in order to really gain momentum going into the postseason and forget these first 6 games where they have played and they were blown out by 50 points, against the Dolphins. And I'm hoping with the speed of this offense that they can do something similar to that, potentially, and show that they can be consistent on offense. Because I think that's the one difference from showing that the Packers could have been a 3-2 team, possibly a 4-1 team, if the offense had been consistent, like they had been in the second half. There was some crazy second half stat where the Packers had the most points scored in the second half, but they're just they've been abysmal in the first half. And even some games, the second half, I think, I think that, but yeah, I'm going to pick Packers by 7. Go Pack, go for this. Looking at our next game, we have Chargers Chiefs. Chargers and Chiefs. I fully expect the Chiefs to win. I think that the Chargers, are going to fall short, especially at Arrowhead. I don't really have too much that I want to say about this game, but the Chiefs have been playing, they're playing at a really good level. Even though their offense, it says, is fifth, I think that they can be even better on offense. And I think that because the Chargers, are visiting there and they've just never performed well against the Chiefs these last few years. Like, let's even look at the last matchup. I mean, you do have these, obviously the last time they met was last year and it was kind of competitive, but the Chiefs just have such a way of winning that it's, to me, the Chargers defense, I think, just gets exposed by Mahomes and they're ultimately playing catch up, but maybe this would be the game. I do kind of only expect the Chiefs to win by 3 or something in this game, but yeah, the Chargers, I mean, let's look at, I guess, the injury report real quick for this. You're missing a few guys, no one of huge thing, but Derwin James with an ankle injury is kind of crazy because he's kind of that guy that can, go with Kelsey, and if he's not fully healthy, like Kelsey could have a heyday. And then you have, Watson for the Chiefs is out, unfortunately. He's been kind of playing really well, which sucks for him. Questionable Jalen Watson, the cornerback, being out. But I think, Trent McDuffie and Snead, they really are really two like scrappy corners that I think could make it really hard on Herbert, even though Herbert throws, really accurate footballs. But yeah, looking at this, I think that the Chiefs win this game. And I guess I'm going to go look at the depth chart real quick. I think that Pacheco is going to be able to like run against this team really well. And I think that, crazy enough, I think that this team, I think Rashee Rice could potentially be starting soon because he's been doing really good things. And I think that Khalil Mack's been having a good year, but I don't think he's really going to be able to get to Mahomes, to be honest with you. And Bosa just hasn't been doing very much, and obviously the O-line for Kansas City is really good. And I think that this D-line is going to get after, and like I said, make it very tough on Herbert. So yeah, Chiefs by 3. Let's look at the Chargers, I guess, real quick here. But yeah, Keenan Allen's been doing really well. I think that Joshua Palmer has promise. Let's hope he keeps on playing. Maybe Eckler is more involved in the game plan, but I just don't really see him doing really well with like Chris Jones and Nick Bolton, being their stalwart, run defensive players, but yeah, this could be a close game, but I ultimately think that the Chiefs win by 3. Moving on to the last 2 games of the week, we have the Dolphins and Philadelphia. Dolphins visiting Philadelphia. I think that this could be like a potential, I wouldn't say like trap game type of thing, but they do have the Eagles winning it. I'm not even sure, looking at this game, who's going to win. I think that this defense of the Eagles is really good, but I do think that, I think that they have a number of injuries, I guess, right now. Okay, maybe not. Maybe, okay, so Bradley Roby is still the only one. Okay, never mind. So they have Davis is back fully healthy playing. And then Fletcher Cox, of course. Josh Sweat's really good. And then, of course, we can't forget about Darius Slay. Reed Blankenship, I guess, being out is kind of a blow. He's been playing well. James Bradbury, obviously. But overall, this team is just very stout, and they get to the quarterback really well. And I think that could be the case against Tua. That's probably the only matchup that I think about, is why they may lose this game, because Tua is going to be under a lot of duress. You're not going to be able to really utilize the deep ball very much with how much pressure that Philadelphia has been causing. you still have, you have obviously Waddle, Wilson, and Hill, fully healthy, and that sort of thing. But, you know, your O line is good, but not like the best and I think that, and then Tua is just not really one to like escape a lot. He is very accurate, but yeah, you've got a defense that's also been susceptible. So AJ Brown and excuse me, and AJ Brown and God, why can't I remember his name? Devonta Smith do a really good job. I thought it was interesting how they brought in Julio Jones. Maybe it's because of the injury to, Quez Watkins or something. They wanted more depth or something because they just don't have that many wide receivers, to be honest, on the Eagles. Not like they need too many. But, Goddard is also very good. I think that, assuming that Jalen Hurts, plays his game, I think that he's going to be able to really expose this Dolphins team now thinking about it a little bit with this game. But yeah, then the first ranked offense against the number 2 offense, and obviously the defense of the Dolphins like way worse than I think that they would have expected to be. But they're obviously first in passing and rushing. A little bit of inflation here, I think, because they played a team like the Broncos, but I do think that they're easily top 5, in rushing and receiving, to be honest, even if that wasn't the case. But I think I am going to give this game to the Eagles because I think Miami, it was kind of shown to me through the Bills game, and the Bills aren't one of those teams either that usually put up a ton of points, or a crap ton of yards, but you do have a guy like Diggs that gets open, and I think that Hurts and Allen have, somewhat similar play styles where it's like both good runners, but they pass first. And I think that that's going to be the X factor is that the, Dolphins may not be able to contain as well as protect against the pass with the way their defense has been playing, which I think is their liability. I think I'm going to give Philadelphia by 7 points. I think that this game could easily come down to the last drive, however, and it could be like it could be Philadelphia scoring a touchdown to go 4 points ahead of a Dolphins defense, because I do think that the Dolphins are going to have a pretty good, game offensively. But I mean, just because they have all that talent, I think that the Eagles' strength is still their defense, and that they're going to be able to enforce pressure on Tua to where it's going to really limit their offense. But yeah, Eagles by 4 in this game. Moving on, we have San Fran at Minnesota. I really don't think that this game is going to be really that competitive, to be honest with you. Obviously Justin Jefferson is still out. Even if he did play, I think that this isn't that much of a contest. We are going to look at the injury report real quick, of course, and obviously I guess I haven't said anything. So let's look at the depth chart really quick to see what, they say about both of these teams. We obviously have the Vikings, we'll look at them quick, but yeah, no, Jefferson obviously out. It's going to be Kirk, Madison, Osborne, and Addison. And, Brennan Powell and Hawkinson, as their weapons, but I just don't see their defense holding up. I'm kind of looking at this, and I'm like, Danielle Hunter is apparently on the trade block. It just doesn't look very good for them. Going down to the Niners here. Let's see what they say. So they do say questionable for McCaffrey and Samuel. Obviously, Samuel exited early maybe not early, but first half in the game last week. And then McCaffrey, like I said, they kept him safe, I think, later in the game. And they were trying to rely on Purdy, who threw some uncharacteristic balls last week. But it was against a defense that is far better than the Vikings. And looking at this, I just, they're fully healthy on, they're pretty healthy on defense or whatever. But as long as they have like this front four backed up by Warner and Greenlaw and even Oren Burks, I think that this team just doesn't lose. And the Vikings, yeah, you can cause some pressure to Kirk Cousins and get him to throw some picks, to be honest with you. So yeah, I'm actually gonna say San Fran by 17 points. And that's my take on this game for Monday night. Even if you only have McCaffrey or Debo, I think it kind of shows that even when they didn't have Ayuk and they only had Debo, who Debo's obviously more talented than Ayuk, but I think that this team Kyle Shanahan does a really good job of getting this team ready and playing. And, Trent Williams obviously had like one of his worst games of his career he had one of the worst games of his career against, obviously Myles Garrett, but the Vikings, their best is Danielle Hunter. And I still don't see Trent really, giving up that much to Danielle Hunter, to be honest with you, who just isn't as, crazy of a pass rusher as Myles Garrett is. So yeah, San Fran by 17. So looking at these games, I think that this is a very good week. Like I said, a few really good matchups, and some obvious winners this week, I think, but overall some really good games. I am gonna have to go, you guys. I kind of have to be at this thing. But if you were watching, I'd like to thank you for watching Cast, and as always, go Pack Go, and I'll see you next time.